I stopped having s*x with my wife unless she was sober, and now we're stuck in a loveless, roommate-like marriage, unsure of our future. My wife, 35F, and I, 35M, have been married for 15 years and together for 20. We have 2 children, ages 12 and 14, whom we adore, and we try constantly to provide them with the greatest possible life. Things have been difficult over the last 3 years. I recognize that our children take a lot of our time and resources, with school, band, sports, and extracurricular activities. I am aware of the toll it may have on marriages. However, for the last 3 years, my wife and I have had very little closeness or intercourse. We've been attempting to work on that aspect of our relationship, but the last year has been the most difficult, by far the darkest year of our marriage. We seldom spoke and eventually became roommates, co-parenting under the same home. It was gloomy and discouraging, prompting us to consider divorce. Things became so dark that the entire home turned dismal. We sought aid through individual and couples therapy, which seemed to improve gradually. We began having in-depth conversations about what our marriage looked like and what we hoped it could be. Then things got tougher. My wife told me she was no longer in love with me, but simply saw me as a best friend and loved me in a platonic way. This absence of romantic love was one of the reasons she did not want closeness or sex. I was astonished and devastated. I grew angry and unhappy, unable to understand why the person I loved no longer wanted or desired me. Things deteriorated again, and we were back at square one. One afternoon, I had a heart-to-heart with her, asking where the source of the problem was. Her reaction was, "I don't know." She admitted to harboring animosity against me but couldn't pinpoint the source. This provided little information into how to fix things, leaving me perplexed and frustrated. We've gotten to the point where she claims she has no sex drive or desire for intimacy. She claims she only wants companionship, implying a co-parenting roommate dynamic. I asked her what I could do or what made me unappealing, and her response was invariably, "I don't know." She admits to loving me, but it isn't the same. She's felt isolated for years, and marriage seems like too much work. Her primary emphasis is on the children, and my efforts as a co-parent are important to her. I'm at a loss and simply voicing my frustration. It's difficult to accept that the person you love no longer cares about you. I feel as if I'm only here to give financially and as a parent. When she talks about companionship, it appears that she is content with having a nice father for the children and my financial assistance. She has told me that she has no interest in intimacy and does not want it right now. She stated that the only way she could have sex was if she was intoxicated, which I find abhorrent and unacceptable. I told her I wouldn't be a part of that because forcing herself into intimacy with booze or drugs is unhealthy. To my surprise, this angered her and made her more aloof. Despite this, we are both very honest and open. We have never cheated and we have full access to each other's phones, emails, and social media, but we rarely check. I inquired whether there was anyone else and she denied it, which I trust. We gently searched each other's belongings and, as predicted, found nothing untoward. We've always been forthright, even about difficult things, so I don't suspect any wrongdoing or cheating. Is it wrong for me to decline sex when she's intoxicated? I'm solid in my viewpoint since drunk or high sex does not sit well with me. I have no idea how to help our position, and I am feeling increasingly frightened and frantic. We're both fairly young, healthy and attractive. We both have stable employment and are excellent parents. I'm not sure how our lives brought us to this point. I'd appreciate some outside perspective and advice on how to handle something like this. It feels terrible to be unwanted and undesirable by my own husband. I despise it. We did some swinging in the past, which was enjoyable for a bit. We agreed to stop and have determined that it is no longer a factor. When we were swinging, our marriage appeared to be in good condition. We informed our couples therapist to ensure that we were not overlooking a potential problem. I asked my wife if our swinging experience had changed her opinion of our relationship, but she responded no. Our swinging was always done together, and it was entirely sex-based, with no emotional or polyamorous elements. I believe her because she has always been upfront and honest, even when it is uncomfortable. Swinging was her idea, not mine, and I trust her when she says it's no longer an issue. It could be something she needs to discuss further with her therapist or during our couples treatment. Update 1. The term resentment has long been a central element in therapy. It's been eating me up inside, especially since my wife keeps telling me she has no idea why she is bitter or what's bothering her emotionally. I brought this up again with our therapist, and we spoke about how we'd been together for 15 years, married since we were 14 years old. We grew up together and welcomed our first child when she was 19 and I was 20. That dramatically altered the trajectory of our life. We lived in extreme poverty and faced several difficulties, with little social life over the past decade since we were too preoccupied with raising children. Our children, now 12 and 14, took up all of our attention. The therapist asked my wife a lot of questions about her emotions, and 90% of her answers were about the kids. It felt like she was reluctant to say how bad things were at times because she may feel guilty or ashamed, as if it meant she regretted having children. I brought this up during the session, and the therapist pushed her to look at things from a more personal perspective, rather than just as a mother. This was an eye-opener. My wife stated that she was frustrated that we had lost out on so many life events. She was clear, though, that she didn't miss out on other relationships, dating or partying, but she did feel like she had lost all of her friends. This was huge, as one of the most difficult aspects of our lives has been how secluded we've grown while raising children. I reminded her of the importance of friendships and how she should prioritize herself and her social relationships. For the past 3 years, we've talked about the importance of friendships, particularly with peers who can help us negotiate life's problems or just provide us joy. My wife always avoids this, despite her desire for external stimuli. Her children have always been the reason she hasn't invested in friendships or herself. At this point in the conversation, it was evident that many of her complaints were related to the children. I inquired whether she was upset with me because I got her pregnant so young, and she responded no. She admitted that it was illogical to blame me because it takes two to tango. I saw this as progress since it provided us with something to work on. We agreed to devote more time to nurturing friendships, both jointly and individually. Toward the end of the session, we addressed next moves. It was still unknown what would happen. I was forthright in asking my wife what her plans were. I had decided before the session that if she insisted on the co-parenting roommate scenario, I would turn 180 degrees and focus on myself. She essentially repeated the same thing: she doesn't want closeness or sex with me right now, but she loves me and feels horrible about not being there for me. As I said in my initial post, I brought up the brief swinging encounter and she assured me that it was not an issue. I agree with her, it was a mechanical solution to a problem that did not exist at the time. We tried it, agreed to quit, and went on. I also mentioned additional life situations that could have produced animosity, but we didn't make much progress in determining the fundamental cause, which was frustrating. I immediately told my wife that I would not be okay with the arrangement. I informed her that I had done everything I could and that this matter no longer involved me or required any more action on my side. I was quite clear that I would not tolerate this dynamic and that I needed to be with someone who actively participated in our marriage, worked toward resolutions, and was interested in sustaining an intimate and sexual relationship. I made it plain that I was not going to be a convenience or just a roommate and co-parent. I told her that I loved her and wanted this to work, but that I would only stay committed to the marriage if she was as devoted. If she wasn't, I wouldn't continue in a relationship where my efforts weren't appreciated. I assured her that I had no plans to leave or seek a divorce, but if this dynamic persisted, divorce was unavoidable. Of course, there were tears, and the session ended on a gloomy, unhappy note. Nothing was addressed, and I left feeling discouraged, determined to begin the 180 approach as soon as possible. The 180 method necessitates maintaining distance while remaining cold and transactional, which is unpleasant, especially since this dynamic was already chilly and transactional. I started following the 180 tactics the same day, informing my wife that I would respect the roommate and co-parent dynamic without complaint, but she should know that I wasn't happy and would never be okay with it. I also told her that if she didn't want to put in the effort, I would stop working on it. She agreed and retired to bed. I began establishing distance, focused on myself, and keeping conversations brief and transactional. When she requested for assistance with personal matters, I declined, which surprised her. She was outraged, accusing me of being juvenile, but I emphasized that she was now accountable for her own life and difficulties. We didn't talk much during the next 3 days, just when absolutely necessary. During this time, she grew visibly concerned and stressed, but I resisted my natural want to console and assist her. She cried one night, telling me she was stressed and worried about me because of my indifference. I reminded her calmly that she had chosen this dynamic, and that I too was taking care of myself. It's been difficult to be cold and distant since, as I've indicated, I adore her and want to touch and console her. However, I knew this could be manipulation on her part to keep me in the friend zone, so I remained the course. Now, a week into the 180 method, I've noticed a lot of changes on her end. I believe she is coming to realize that I am more than just a co-parent and buddy. A few days ago, I texted her a bill breakdown and a 50-50th split on our financial responsibility. She was enraged, calling it out of left field. I said that friends split everything 50-50ths, and as her friend, I expected the same. This made me realize how much I'd been taken for granted. Her pleasure and convenience had been at my expense. I pushed on, reminding her that this was the dynamic she had requested, and that it was still a good deal because she would have to fund 100% of everything if she were on her own. To summarize, while the 180 method has proven effective in many aspects, I remain concerned about the entire issue. There have been numerous eye-opening experiences, some of which have been difficult to confront. However, it has generated renewed energy and attempts on her part. She's talking to me more, and while it's difficult to say no, I hope this continues as things improve. I've also seen that she's making more time for herself outside of motherhood, which is significant given that she neglected herself for many years. I'm glad to see her become more like herself again. My goal is that as we work on ourselves, our marriage will improve. It's impossible to predict where this will go from here. We remain courteous and friendly, which is a positive indication. Boundaries are established, and expectations are extremely apparent. Whatever the conclusion, I will be satisfied with everything that has been accomplished. We will continue with couples therapy until we either reignite our marriage or divorce. A non-biased third party serves as a witness and advisor during this process. No matter what, I will always love my wife, but I will not participate in a sexless, intimacy-free marriage because we deserve more. Am I the asshole for banning in-laws from seeing our daughter after they gave her an unauthorized medication, despite our clear objections? Original post. I know how the title sounds, but please bear with me. Throwaway for obvious reasons. I, 24M, and my wife, 24, recently had our daughter in July. She is the best thing to ever happen to my wife and I, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have our little bundle of joy. She recently got sick while staying with her grandparents, my in-laws, while my wife and I took a trip for work. For context, my in-laws are really big into LifeWave X39. It's a patch that supposedly helps regrow stem cells by reflecting light rays back into your body, allowing your body to produce more stem cells to fight off diseases and sickness. If you ask me, it sounds like snake oil, and my wife agrees, calling it a pyramid scheme. The only way to get said patches is by spending well over $1,000, and then you're tasked with selling the patches yourself. It's essentially some multi-level marketing product, where the more patches you sell, the more money you make. Falling right in line with my wife's comparison to a pyramid scheme, but MLMs are somehow legal. Now, I've tried doing research on X39, and the only comments I've seen praise said product are brand new accounts never used before or after, or their entire profile is dedicated to shilling out for LifeWave X39. In my own research, they appear to just be overpriced stickers. They contain no medication, no special UV rays or anything of the sort. They're literally just an overpriced sticker with an air bubble. But my wife and I have made it very clear that we wanted no part in X39, nor did we want our daughter to have it. Even if it's fake, we wanted no part in it, and on the off chance it did something, I didn't want our daughter to be used as their lab rat or guinea pig. Now, before we left our daughter with my in-laws, we provided them with some infant medication, just in case she got sick. Can never be too safe, you know? Well, we returned home from the work trip early because our daughter wasn't getting any better, so we picked her up and went home. We were going to give her a bath, and in the process of taking her jacket off, we found an X39 patch on her arm. Upon finding it, we immediately called her parents and demanded to know why she had a patch on her. Her parents tried saying that, it's safe for the baby, we even ordered the ones for ages 7 and younger. And that, it's practically medication. Their words. Which still didn't answer our question. So my wife checked the go bag, and the Motrin we gave them was, while it was used, not used very much at all. Her parents tried claiming that someone else in their group, or whatever, gave it to their son and they got better in a week. Point is, we didn't buy it nor did we care. We've made it abundantly clear that we wanted nothing to do with X39 and we didn't want our daughter to be a part of it. They failed to listen. My wife was on the phone with them for over an hour, and while I don't know the exact length the conversation went to, I know it at least ended with her screaming, "Going to see my fucking daughter again, and if you attempt to come to my house we will call the police," before hanging up. That was 3 days ago now, and we've had several missed calls from family members, her parents, her siblings, and even family friends, all saying that we overreacted, and they were just trying to help. Maybe we overreacted, but we wanted nothing to do with that, and despite making it clear, they went against our wishes and did it anyway. And instead of giving my daughter actual medication, they try to give her some placebo patch. Her parents tried claiming that we're stopping them from seeing their only grandchild over something so small. But we did want to hear it. AITA? AITA has no consensus bot, OOP was NTA relevant comments. Linda Pandrix, I kinda think YTAH for leaving your sick baby to go out of town. OP, We didn't leave a sick baby to go out of town. We left her with her grandparents while she was fine. We only packed Motrin because, as I stated in my post, you can never be too careful. She got sick while we were out of town, not before. Mediocre key 4992. You say that like it's snake oil, like it's just as bad as the X39. Was it Advil and cough syrup? Or just a generic bottle that you wrote infant medication on? You expect us to believe that you gave them medication just in case she got sick and then she immediately got sick? Come on, this sounds like total BS. OP, her grandparents don't exactly have children medication laying around. We packed her Motrin, which I quite literally stated later in the post had you read it, not some generic bottle, or snake oil and just as bad, nor do they have the ability to really go anywhere. They live a good 30-40 minutes outside of any nearby town. The drive to and from her parents is a grand whole hour drive from where we live. And my wife and I quite literally work with sick people all the time. No, I'm not a doctor nor do we have medical expertise. So my wife and I contracting something is usually pretty high, so we pack Motrin or whatever the store brand is that we'll buy, every time we left her with her grandparents for more than a day. Update 1. About a month ago I made this post ranting about my in-laws' weird obsession with a, for lack of a better term, cult regarding stem cell regeneration through patches, which, clearly isn't a real thing. There's been some development on that end, and while I'm confident things will likely end here, I wanted to give a quick update for those who may have been curious. I'm writing this on the toilet at work, so don't mind the rushiness of it all. After my wife essentially cut ties with them and we all received a million phone calls and text messages from family and friends, things quieted down for about a week or two. We started having my sister watch our daughter instead, when we had to work. We haven't had another out-of-trip town since the initial post, however. Through those couple of weeks we never really heard anything beyond a couple of supposed shit-talking posts on Facebook bitching about us, but I can't seem to find the posts. We thought things were, probably, hopefully, going to end there, but boy were we wrong. And this is quite the jump from the last post. My wife and I were visited by CPS about 2 weeks ago or so, after they received concerning calls about supposed child abuse and negligence within the household. Of course, nothing like that happened and the caseworker was very quick to see that. We had asked who reported her, and while she couldn't say, we had a suspicion it was from her parents. We were completely helpful and cooperative with the caseworker, and after she left that night, my wife called her mom up and asked her if she's the one who called CPS. Surprisingly, her mother took full accountability, but not so surprisingly, tried to spin it around in her favor, claiming that she did it for our own good, because our daughter was sick and she wasn't getting any better, when she was there, so clearly we were doing something awful as parents. Kids get sick, it happens. But they're also extreme anti-vaxxers. Not just COVID, I mean everything. From even something as trivial as the flu shot. Yet, they're willing to shill out thousands of dollars for some supposed stem cell regeneration sticker. The fucking hypocrisy and irony in their bullshit is unmatched. My wife didn't really know how to react to that, so she basically told her mom to go fuck herself, and she wants nothing to do with her again. I know I saw a few comments on the last post saying maybe we shouldn't have cut them out entirely, but now I'm starting to question why we didn't cut them out years ago, before our daughter was even a thought in our heads. About a week after the first audit, my mother-in-law showed up to our house on my day off while my wife was at work, and essentially demanded to see our daughter, forcing her way into our home by pushing past my arm. When I told her to get the hell out of my house, she had no business matching in here like that. She essentially told me that I'm unfit to be a parent because I'm depriving my daughter of help she desperately needed, because she's clearly a very sick child. My daughter is perfectly healthy right now, and in fact, has had no stuffy nose and no high temperature, nothing. I told my MIL straight up that she was batshit insane. I went off on her about how she lied to us, went against our wishes, had the audacity to call and lie to CPS, and then show up at our house unannounced, uninvited, and march herself inside, as well as everything about her X39 LifeWave bullshit. We argued there for a while, before I finally got so fed up. I told her to leave my house before I called the police. She stormed out of the house and in true Karen fashion, said this isn't over. Before slamming my door. I immediately called my wife, who was of course, irate. The following morning, we filed a restraining order at the courthouse from her mom and dad, because they're clearly not in their right mindset. The caseworker had to audit us a few more times as per their guidelines over the past 2 weeks, and yesterday was her last day, where she informed us that we're doing good and she's sorry for the trouble they caused. We kept her up to speed on the LifeWave shit, the showing up unannounced and the restraining order, and though she couldn't really take a side, she seemed apologetic. But my wife and I are pretty livid. We started looking at houses in another state to get as far away from her in-laws as possible. Our company has offices out there, so it's entirely possible we could just be transferred. So we're crossing our fingers that all goes well, the restraining order gets filed soon enough, and we'll get a place clear across the country so that this will hopefully be my last update. Update 2. Hello everyone, thank you for being so supportive. I've read some of the comments, though not all, far too many. And I know some of you have asked for updates, and so I wanted to give everyone an update for those still interested. Things aren't going to be as juicy in this post as the last two, but some new things have happened, so I'll just jump right in. After my in-laws called CPS on us for no discernible reasons other than we forbid them from seeing our daughter, things mostly quieted down. Some of you suggested that we should do more than just get a restraining order, so we bought some security cameras and had them installed all around our property, and our neighbors, who are pretty good friends of ours, was in the loop for the most part, and anytime we had to go somewhere, not only did we have video cameras recording every time someone entered our driveway displayed directly on our phones, our neighbors kept us updated too. She stopped coming around for the first few months since she called CPS on us, but just the month before last, as we were preparing to move, my in-laws somehow got word we planned on moving states and attempted to block our driveway as her dad tried blocking the front door. Not sure what their plan was there because we have a back door and an extra side door leading from the kitchen, but I digress. Her mom blocked the driveway, stopping our U-Haul or car from leaving the property, and wouldn't budge, even after we told them we would call the police. They told us they'd move if we told them where we were moving to, but my wife told them that wasn't happening and they had 10 minutes to leave or we'd be calling the police. My neighbor came over during the commotion, but my in-laws still wouldn't budge. My daughter is crying during all of this as my wife is trying to console her, as my neighbor and I are attempting to remove my father-in-law from the doorway, but he wouldn't move. Eventually my wife called the police, and I'm guessing another neighbor called them as well because they responded within mere minutes. My in-laws kept screaming that we were taking their rightful grandchild away, and that we'd all be damned to burn in hell for this, but honestly that just made me laugh. The police kept asking them to leave, but they wouldn't. Eventually they were arrested for refusing to leave, and the police were nice enough to call a tow truck for us to be able to back out of the driveway. Lo and behold, as the police were handcuffing my in-laws, they both had on those X39 patches, and even the police questioned them about it. But whatever, what's done is done. We were able to finally leave and on to new adventures. We've been settled in at our new house for the better part of over a month, and we're enjoying it greatly. No word from her in-laws, and they have no idea where we are. We have them blocked, but we'll eventually get messages from unknown numbers or Facebook accounts asking where we moved, but there's no way they're that foolish to believe we'll actually tell them. Luckily, neither my last state or this one have any grandparents' rights, so we're in the clear there. Thank you everyone. Hopefully this is my last update. Relevant comments, Quicksand32. Seriously, look into a P.O. box and have all mail routed there. OOP. Hey there. We actually did get our mail routed to a P.O. box. Sofla son. Why were they not arrested for violating a restraining order? OOP. We informed the police they had a restraining order. I just don't think they cared. They were more concerned with getting them off our property as opposed to them violating the restraining order. I think one of their final charges after being arrested was violation of a restraining order, though the police just didn't seem to care at the time, which is unfortunate, to say the least. Final update. Well, this is certainly to be the last update, when I honestly thought the last post I made would be the final one. About 4.5 months ago, give or take me, my wife and daughter moved across the country to avoid her parents, and I'm happy to say that, beyond some annoying phone calls from different numbers, and messages on Facebook, things were quiet. About 3 months ago or so I posted what I thought would be the final update, but I know some of you asked to be kept in the loop, so here we are. Over a month ago or so, we were informed that her in-laws were shot and killed by the new homeowners of the previous house we lived in. In their infinite wisdom, they for some reason thought we never actually moved after not getting any responses and broke into our previous house to kidnap our daughter. The new homeowners were awake, and after my in-laws broke into what was our daughter's room, which was now the homeowner's child's room, the homeowners shot my father-in-law, killing him almost instantly. My mother-in-law tried to climb out of the window but was shot in the back, and succumbed to it while in the hospital. I don't have all the details, these are just what I was able to piece together from the police report and my old neighbor. My wife is in shock and isn't quite sure how to handle the news, but she at least tells me that she at least knows now that our daughter will finally be safe. After we got the news, we just sat on the couch and I comforted her all night, and we both eventually fell asleep on the couch. She says she finally feels safe and is glad our kid will be, but she still never wanted them to die, and I get that. I don't wish death upon anybody. My wife and I are glad the current homeowners and their kid is okay, and she's shaken, Worried that if we hadn't moved, they'd have succeeded and kidnapped our daughter. I told her there's no use worrying about the what ifs, because what's done is done and at least she's safe. My wife agreed, but I can still tell she's trying to wrap her head around the entire ordeal. We had started seeing a therapist about the entire experience and the therapist suggested taking a vacation, so I just recently purchased some tickets to Hawaii and had just surprised my wife with them this weekend, as a nice little getaway vacation, as my wife always wanted to go to Hawaii. My wife was ecstatic when I showed her the tickets and she's excited to go, and I'm hoping this vacation is just what she needs for hopefully not stress as much. I feel awful knowing that my wife isn't sure where to go or what to do, and I'm being her rock as best as I can, and I'm thankful that we have that therapist for her to work through some of her stress and get help. My wife and I are doing okay. If anyone is curious, she's just trying to wrap her head around what happened. This will be my final update, everyone, and I'm hoping everyone here has a great day. We leave for Hawaii in a week, so we're both excited. My wife has been trying to keep her mind off things by focusing on the trip, as she says it's helping. I'll catch everyone later, but don't expect any updates. Goodbye everyone, thank you all for your support.